Hey, good morning. Noel here. I wanted to take you through a nice follow along hip mobility workout, a quick 20-minute routine to hit your hips at different angles. A couple of things you might need is a low ankle. If you want to use Superbands to make the stretches even more, I'd recommend getting some, either 1.25 inch or an inch band. If you've got more weight to you, I would say 1.25 inch. If you're a little lighter, I would say an inch. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this band to get a little more movement out of our hips while we're doing our stretches. We're going to do 5 different stretches, about 2 minutes per side, adding up to about 20 minutes total. Maybe you'll add an extra few minutes there for transitioning. So another thing you might need, or a couple things you might need, is a mat, a low anchor point. So maybe if you don't have a ladder bar, you can use your bedpost if you have room, a sofa leg, table leg that will stay in place, and maybe a couple yoga blocks or some bolsters or pillows to give you, make the ground a little bit closer to you. So this is how we're going to get started. We're going to take the thick band and we're going to loop it around our low anchor point. Go ahead and get set. Before we start rolling though, what we might want to do is just get a little bit of an assessment of how our hips are doing today. So something simple like a cat-cow movement, a child's posture, a little lunge. Feeling if there are any aches or pains or pulls that feel like they could maybe be a little bit better as you go out into your day. So we're going to start on the right side, and what we're going to do is we're going to hit a couple of probably stretches that may be familiar to you. First one is going to be a pigeon stretch. So we got our band, and we're going to loop our right leg through the band and get it way high up there, like all the way up towards your groin. That way it's when it pulls back, it's pulling your hip joint out to the side, not your thigh and not your back, your hip joint. So from here, we're going to bend that right knee in, resting on your shin, and that's okay through your knee. And then from here, scoot towards your left till you get some good pull back from that band. And I like to go forward a little bit with it too, so that the band's pulling back at an angle, creating a little bit more of that nice, good deep stretch sensation in the hip joint. You want to be careful about any sharp pain in your knee, so you can bend it or straighten it out to make sure you're not putting too much pressure on your knee. You want most of the weight in your hips. Now this is where blocks come in handy, because if you can't quite rest on the ground, sometimes it's nice to have a block to rest into to give you just a little additional support. And all we're going to do is start our time for about 2 minutes. You can set a timer, or you can count breaths. Let's say if you do slow full breaths, and you can do about 6 in a minute, I would say 12 slow full breaths if you don't have a timer. So we'll start there. And you can come down to your forearms or stay high. But as you're doing this, give yourself just a little bit of rotation of your belly in towards your right thigh until you get, again, a deeper sensation that's tolerable. And it allows you to keep breathing deeply. So we'll take our inhale, and nice breath out. Now, if we're doing 12 breaths, imagine yourself taking 10 seconds for each cycle of breath in and breath out. You might notice as you drop into your breath and get into that meditation, the sensations in your muscles may be a little less intense. And as things shift, you might make an adjustment to hit another level of intensity and then reconnect with your breath. do a couple more inhales and exhales. Let your right hip drag out to the side, but don't roll completely onto your right side. You want to keep a lot of your weight over to your left still, but just your hip is going to the right. Okay, now to make our transition, next step, we're going into a lizard position or a low lunge. So you might be familiar with this as well. We're gonna come up to our hands, take it slow because we're in a pretty stretched position. Really use your hands and slide that leg out. And we're gonna go right into a lunge. So your foot's down, you're wiggling it in. You have the same angle pull towards the back right. Now if you be on your hands and you already feel a pretty good stretch, stay there. If you want to make it a little bit deeper, this is where blocks come in handy. You can come down to your forearms, start with your left and then your right, or if you're even more flexible, left and then your right on the floor. I'm going to start with the blocks just to make this a little more comfortable. Yeah, I kind of middle ground here. So while we're here, again, we're going to stay for about 12 breaths. The points to this position are a little different. You have the same pull back in your hip, back and to the right. You want to keep your weight over to your left. But you also want, now you want to make sure your toes are on the floor and they don't leave like this. So keep your big toe down the entire time. So it's a little more active here. You got to keep that foot in position. So you're going to feel a little bit of engagement in the inner thigh. And if you get a little bored with it, you can add a little movement. So it's nice to pull that knee in, keeping your foot flat on the ground. And what that does is it helps increase the internal rotation of the band here. So you're gonna feel your hip really pulling back to the side. And then you're gonna add a little external rotation. But again, keep your toes down on the floor. And you can go back and forth really slowly with your breath. Same thing, we're going for 2 minutes, just about. Another thing to note, you don't have to use a band for all this. You can do, if you don't have a band with you, if you don't have an anchor or anything like that, you can do all this similarly, just imagine it without the band. Do 2 more breaths. Woo. All right, same thing. Use your hands to help you up. It's a pretty deep stretch. Huh. Now the fun part about all this too is you're going to keep your leg in the band the entire time. There's no need to get out. Next step, we're going to go to frog position. Frog, your knees are out to the sides. I'll show you from this angle so you can see. And your toes are out. And your lower legs are more in line with your knees do not. So try to line it up. You want to be facing this way though, because we want the band to be pulling back on your right leg. Look back between your legs. Just make sure you're in center. If your sacrum is in line with the anchor point of the band. And it's going to be a little out to the right. Slide out, resting on your knees to a comfortable level. If you need that extra padding for your knees, do so. If you need to take it a little bit less, you can always bend your knees a little bit more, and I'll take the stretch out of the inner thighs. But I would recommend trying to push those lower legs out. And same thing, you bring your blocks, make them handy, use them for your chest. And we're just going to allow that band to pull our hips back a little bit. A couple things you can do just to get a little more out of this stretch is you're going to let that band pull you back a little bit and push with your forearms. So you're pushing your hips back towards the ladder and then coming out of it. You'll feel the stretch get a little more intense as your hips go back. And you can do that a few times. You can also tuck the tailbone towards the ground and untuck the tailbone. So you're just moving with your hips down towards the floor and you're pulling your hips up towards the ceiling. Same thing, we're holding this for a couple minutes. And then slowly, we're going to make our way back. Oh, keep your leg in the band. We're not done yet. We got a couple more. Next step, we're going to start getting into the hamstrings, and we're going to start coming up off the mat. Use your blocks. If you don't have them, I would just try to find something to help prop you up. And we're going to get into a pyramid position. Pyramid meaning one leg is in front of the other, creating a triangle shape from the side. And you're going to move with your right leg forward, left leg behind you. So your right hip is getting pulled back, but you're keeping your weight forward. Don't let your body dump back. You want to stay kind of active. You want to feel the resistance of the band pulling it back. Almost like you're doing a tether type of movement. So from there, again, look behind you, make sure you're lining up with that band. And move out to a level that feels sustainable. You have blocks in hands. Same thing, 2 minutes, about 12 reps. Inhaling, getting a little length in your spine. And exhale. Try to make that stretch a little more intense by tilting your tailbone back for your exhale breath. Inhale, get a little length, get a little lift. Exhale, get a little longer. Couple things you can do if you get a little bored. You can bend your knee, lunge into it, and keep your knee bent right here, and then try to bring just your hips back. Your knee's going to come with you, but the idea is you're trying to create a little more stretch in the upper hamstrings. You can bend your knee again, try to bring your belly closer to your thigh, and again, pushing back. Or I should say reaching back with your hip. You can also pull your toes up towards your nose. Get it down into your calves a little bit more and relax. I like this a lot for any kind of sciatica issues, getting an extra stretch out of that nerve. Take a few more breaths. All right, stay in the band. One more to go. Bring your blocks close to the ladder. Now the trick here is we're going to turn around, keeping that band in our thigh. And we're going to bring it to the back of your right thigh. Take your right knee down, This is where people get confused. Bring your right knee down first, left leg up. The band's gonna come right underneath the cleft of your bum. Okay, so just on the upper part of your hamstring, right at the bottom of your butt. And it's there so it can catch the thigh as you lunge back. You'll see it starts to tighten up around there. I wanna bring it as far back as I can. And I use the blocks, or I use whatever I have for my hands to press up into a lunge. I'm gonna stack them here. It's gonna be a taller handle, because what I want to happen here is I want the band to pull my right hip forward as I kind of lean back a little bit with the rest of my body. So just like everything else, your hip's going one way, the rest of your body's going their way, or staying put. See if you can allow that band to do most of the work. So you're not like pushing your hip forward, you're letting the band gently pull your hip forward as your thigh loosens up. The intensity is in maintaining the position, because it's kind of heavy on the left leg, a little heavy on the right leg. If you want a little extra, you can take that right arm up and give yourself a little reach to the side, maybe a little bit of a back bend. But still allow your hips to go forward, or your right hip to go forward. We're going to come out of this slowly. Use your everything else aside from the leg you just stretched. Come back down. Now it's good to walk it out in between sides just to get a feel for your left and right. You might notice the right hip is sitting a little bit more nicely underneath you. Feels a little more connected to the ground as opposed to the leg you didn't stretch. And maybe go back through some of those movements. Little cat-cow. Definitely feels different left to right. Little child's posture. Yep. A little lunge. Yep. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing on the left side. Okay, so here we go again. Hopefully you'll get a little different angle, so if you had any questions about where things were, you get a different view, and maybe some answers to your questions. But we're gonna start with pigeon first. So again, we're taking that band, moving it as high as you can, up or underneath your hip. And then from there, we're gonna go into pigeon, sliding onto our shins, using your hands to help us out. You might wanna grab my blocks before we get started. Keep everything that you need handy. And then from there, set yourself up, move forward a little bit in front of the line of pull, and scoot out to the side as best as you can until you feel some good pullback. From there, we're posturing up. Give yourself a little turn into that band. And you can stay upright, or as you get a little looser and you feel a little more comfortable, you can start working your way down to your forearms. Use the block to help hold me in place. Same thing, we're shooting for about 2 minutes or 12 cycles of breath that are about 10 seconds long. Keep letting your weight now, most of your weight, stay over to the right, letting the band pull your left hip over to the left and down. Especially with your exhale, let that pull happen a little bit more. Good. Take a little break. Moving on to lizard. Get your blocks handy. Take your time, use your hands to help you up. Keep weight off your knee as you make this transition. And we're going into the lunge, so your foot's down on the mat. You slide your right leg back. Just get our blocks handy. Because you can either stay up on your hands, be nice and proud in your lunge, or come down your forearms, get nice and low and grounded. And then from here, same thing, we're gonna make sure the toes are all connecting with the mat. Left toe, big, especially that big toe. Don't let it roll up like this. Keep the foot connected, as well as the pinky toe, so see if you can get that guy to function for you as well. And we're holding here for a couple minutes. We can add movement to this as well, so we can pull your left hip inwards. And as you pull, think about increasing that angle of the band pulling back against your hip joint, keeping your toes down. And then letting that go to the left. Same thing, watch out for your toes. They're gonna wanna come up on you, so keep them down. So most of the movement has to happen from your hip joint. If we do this, we take it out of our hip and go into our knee and our ankle. We don't want that. We wanna focus on the hip, keep the toes down. So now that mobility has to happen a lot more from the hip in order to get it opened up. And as you get lower to the ground, this movement's going to be a little more challenging. Taking more than 12 breaths here. Good. All right, we'll give that a break. We're going to move on to frog. Take your time. Weight off the leg to make it easier to make that transition. Okay, so now our knees are apart, toes are out. Get our blocks. We're going to scoot forward so we get some pull back in that band. And then you can rest down on your chest, resting on your hands. Taking a few moments to get settled. And as you're ready for it, you can add a little push back as you breathe out. And inhale, coming out of it. Exhale. Working your hips back. Inhale, pressing forward. Exhale, falling back. Also, we can add a little tilt of our pelvis down towards the floor like a posterior tilt, or up towards the ceiling like an anterior tilt. Give it a couple more breaths. Good. You're going to start to make that transition to pyramid. So again, we keep the line over our leg. We're going to move our left leg forward first, right leg behind us. Line it up so your left hip is right in front of that band. Move it forward till you get a nice amount of pullback from the band. Then you can bend your knees slightly to set your hips up. Try to level them out, and then start to straighten out your left knee without locking it out too hard. And use your breath to get a little longer in your spine. Holding for a couple minutes. To start, you get a little bit of a knee bend and bring your chest a little closer to your thigh, and then keeping all your weight forward, try to just push and reach back with your hips. We're going to make our transition to the last one, lunge for hip flexors. So we're going to turn around. We're going to keep that band on our leg. Take the left knee down first. And right leg up. And then bring this band all the way up just underneath your bottom. So it catches your upper thigh as you lunge back. And keep reaching back as far back as you can go until it can't do it anymore. You get a pretty good pull. Probably the blocks over to your right if you have blocks. Posturing up. Let your upper body and your right side fall back as your left side goes forward. Full inhales, full exhales. Couple more breaths. Good. And then we're slowly going to come out. and walk it out. Let's check in with our baselines. See how we're doing for a cat-cow. Yeah, good freedom there. Sitting back in the child's posture. A little more glide in the hips and thighs. A little lunge action. A lot more mobile on the left and the right. All right. So that's a 20-minute hip routine. You can do it with the band or without it. Again, to review: pigeon stretch, lizard stretch, frog stretch, pyramid stretch, and a deep lunge for your hip flexors. So that's 5 movements. Do it all on one side first, and then the other side. Start with the side that feels a little wonkier. So if you have left hip issues, start with your left side. If you have right hip issues, start with your right side. About 10 minutes per side, so give or take a few minutes from there. And we're looking about 20-25 minutes of a good routine. You're off, and it's quick, it's easy. Make sure you do your sets for 2 minutes, and let me know how it goes. Subscribe or like this channel, and also let me know in the comments if you want to see anything in particular. I'd like to share more information with you guys, stuff you can do at home to help keep your body healthy and happy.